Probably my favorite musician of anybody right now would be Stevie Wonder. But then that can have its advantages too. If say you lived in New York City, then I wouldn't be able to work on my craft to play as well as I would. We were playing like kind of rock and metal stuff, kind of like Metallica type stuff. It wasn't as good as I thought it was. So if you just do one thing, that thing dries up, you're stuck.
Their gigs are becoming heavier and heavier, but for you, you went sideways.
And same for me was through the Joe Satriani, Steve Vai phase.
E minor pentatonic, you shouldn't go outside the rules.
Now I'm sure I had no real idea what I was doing. Dynamic playing and being expressive, like really saying something with the notes. These things take time, and so someone's sick, can you come in and do the gig tonight? It's not arrogance, I'm not thinking, I'm the greatest thing ever. Most blues gigs there's no rehearsal, and the main reason is if we rehearse, and she wanted to do a song that was just guitar and voice to sort of break it down in the middle, and we're doing this and I heard this bee going around my head and then it stung me on the back of the head here. I've definitely had ideas which weren't my own, and I thought they were at the time. I like the music that I write to be quite bare-boned and not have a whole lot of stuff around it and leave it up to the musicians. The language is different, the set of notes and the way in which you play those notes is different.
The triad of heavy metal, Led Zeppelin, Deep Purple, and Black Sabbath, they are all blues influenced.
AC/DC too, right? They were a blues band when they started. He deliberately trying to break the rules and do his own thing. I'm not aiming for that, never have. I'm doing it for me. And I think the thing with AI, they'll see that stuff and they'll want something that's real. Because music's really about human connection, isn't it? Storytelling.
How much is too much?
I'd buy up the cheap guitars back then that are worth a lot of money now.
Or 59 Les Paul.
Everyone wants, they go for like 500,000-600,000 now. Makes me happy, makes me sad, makes me angry. So if you don't want noise, don't live in the city. If I had a new album out, then I don't know what I'd do right now, actually, to be honest. The days of just having to play guitar, those are gone.
Hey, before we jump in, I've got a quick favor to ask. If you're enjoying the show, please hit that follow or subscribe button. It really helps the channel get noticed so more people who are into the same stuff can find us. Plus, it will make me happy and inspired to bring in more guests who are great at what they do. Thanks a lot.
Welcome, Nick, and thank you for your time. Appreciate your time. Before we proceed, who's Nick Granville?
Oh, good question. It's probably easier for other people to find than myself. I play guitar for a living. That's what I do, is I play music. I haven't really had to do anything else. I've been very lucky in that sense. My day, a general day for me, could be anything from recording work to concerts and gigs and stuff like that, but then also a little bit of teaching. I do a little bit of YouTube, although in the last year I've kind of been upping that, trying to ramp it up. Don't know what I'm doing with any of that stuff, trying to figure it out as you go. It's been fun. It's been a real learning curve. So I'd make albums. I've done 5 or 6 now, I think it is, of my own. And I've played on well over 50 or 60 of other people's albums. Lots of TV work when that stuff used to be around. So yeah, but generally get paid to play this. Just like it.
When was the first time you've picked up a guitar, like you decided, oh, this is my thing, I want to grab a guitar? Do you have a guitar hero or something usually that influenced your playing?
Definitely. So I started playing piano when I was 5, and then and my brother played a little bit of guitar around the same time, and then when I was 10 I switched to guitar, and I knew I really wanted to play guitar right from the beginning, but kind of was you'll play piano and your brother will play guitar type thing. And then I switched to guitar, and so my stepfather was a guitar player, and he's half Irish, half Scottish, and we would play songs together. Folk songs and things like that, but he liked jazz and blues stuff, so he kind of got us into that music. But we liked rock, we liked blues, we liked Stevie Ray Vaughan, Jimi Hendrix, people, stuff like that. But then jazz stuff as well and all kinds of stuff. But in terms of guitar heroes, I have lots of them, lots of different people, and it often changes. I'm someone who does a lot of different styles of music. I'm not someone who necessarily is just playing jazz or just playing blues or just playing rock. Kind of do all of these things, and so I end up have heroes in each different thing. Many of the classic players that you would think of are people I love. So in the jazz world, people like Wes Montgomery and Django Reinhardt and Charlie Christian. But then in the rock world, I love people like Michael Landau and Jimi Hendrix, and who else do I like? Loads of people. But then, probably my favorite musician of anybody right now would be Stevie Wonder. He's probably the person I most gravitate to because those songs are just works of genius, if you ask me. So, yeah, he doesn't even play guitar. So, yeah.
How is it like growing up doing music? When I was playing guitar, but I was living in the Philippines, and it's a kind of like a struggle for musicians. How did you manage to go from that stage, like growing up and then doing it full time? And usually parents would be keen to get their kids to work to a corporate job versus you doing it full time. It's like rare. Yeah, kind of rare in music industry.
I think it's a struggle everywhere, though. You said it was a struggle in the Philippines. It's the same here. New Zealand has a lot of probably similar issues. That small country, but then that can have its advantages too, I think, big fish in a little pond. I hate that saying, but it's kind of a thing, right? Whereas, say you lived in New York City, you might be one of 1,000 other guitar players who could do the job, and then starts to become incredibly competitive, which makes people raise to a higher level, I think. But it also means that very few people can really survive doing it, I think there's music everywhere in the world, and people want music, so people need to be doing that. I think it's really important to have people doing it professionally. I think if it ever got to the point where there was nobody doing it professionally, then everybody suffers. Because, if say I had a day job, then I wouldn't be able to work on my craft to play as well as I would. And so therefore the standard of everything goes down, doesn't it? So it's sort of, I think for me the transition to go from doing it full time really just was kind of very organic. I knew what I wanted to do even from a very young age, which a lot of people don't. I knew this is what I wanted to do, and then I think if you want something badly, you'll figure out a way to make it happen. And I worked really hard. I practiced a lot. I made connections with the right kind of people. I went through music schools to sort of, hate the word networking, but networking, if you will, and meeting people. And then just, you do good work and someone recommends you for something else, and you do more work, and, and it keeps kind of growing, and that's what it's done. It's definitely harder now than it was when I started, though.
Yeah, definitely.
I think the next generation have got it, like I learned a lot from playing in recording studios. And that's not much of a thing anymore. There's not work in that area. Hardly ever now. It's like most people have their own. Most of my recording work now is in my own studio downstairs. Whereas for the next generation, that's going to be their reality, is recording in their own spaces. Whereas for me, I was going into recording studios all the time, going into TV studios. And I was out at Avalon TV studios twice a week, every week. Playing, doing TV shows, working on recording stuff, and hearing myself back and going, it wasn't as good as I thought it was, or vice versa. Maybe it was better than I thought it was. So, yeah.
Did you have a day job before?
No, I've never had a day job.
Oh, I thought you had like the transition from, I don't know, maybe you're working from corporate or something, and then.
No, basically went from school, went to music school. I left music, went through college, and then when I was 18, 19, whatever it is when you leave school, it must have been 19 at the time, went to Whitireira Music School, which is out in Parirua, did a commercial music degree. They called it commercial and jazz music, it was really more commercial music. Did that for 3 years, and then I was playing professionally from about the age of 15 anyway. Even when I was at school, I was starting to do gigs and getting paid, and that kind of grew. And then by the time I was at music school, I was pretty much playing full time, even though I was at music school. So once I left music school, it was just keeping doing what I was already doing and just ramping it up a little more.
So how did you turn pro? You mentioned about networking. When you turned pro, in terms of like, how did that work for you? Like during networking, and then suddenly getting some gigs.
Yeah, so there were certain people who opened the door for me for sure. And I think that happens if you can play. If you can really do whatever it is, be it music, whatever you do, if you get to a high level with that, people are going to pay attention. And that's the thing. And the right people paid attention. They started offering me, like I said, I started playing gigs when I was 15 because people recognized I could do it and I could do it well. So they went, okay, well, let's give him some more stuff. And then you do that well, and that leads to the next thing. And before you know it, your name gets around. And I think there's also too something people like about someone who's new on the scene. They kind of want to be involved with something that's, people say you have to kind of work your way up to it. There's also a lot that happens with someone who's new. Everyone wants to be around the new great thing. Do you know what I mean? So if you're the new guy on the scene, it can be a good thing.
Do you still remember the first gig that you had before?
First blues gig
Yeah.
or first gig?
First gig, generally.
Yeah, I do actually. We played my high school band. We played at the school, and that was kind of just a nothing. And then we rehearsed the very next day at the local football club. They had a big hall. So we went in to rehearse, and as we were packing out, a guy drove past and said, "Hey, see drums, you're a band. Do you want to come and play at my party this weekend? I'll pay you guys to come and do it. I want a band." So we were playing like kind of rock and metal stuff.
What sort of metal? Sorry, just to cut you off.
Kind of like Metallica type stuff, that sort of thing, you know. So not heavy, but, you know, what probably AC/DC was kind of considered heavy at the time. And it was funny, we did that gig and the guy said, "Oh, come over," and he said, "Oh, I'm liking the music. He goes, do you guys know, can you play some blues stuff too?" So we played some of that. We played a mixture of kind of Metallica, AC/DC, that sort of rockish type stuff. We played our originals, and then we also played some sort of blues, and he was happy, got paid, and that was kind of really our first kind of gig, if you will.
So how did you feel about that?
It was great. Like, it was like, oh, someone actually wants to pay us to do what we do. We couldn't believe it. And then, yeah.
Is that your turning point? Like, oh, this is kind of like, there's something in it. Now I could probably make a career out of it.
I think I was oblivious to everything at the time. I think I had no idea what was what at the time, and just kind of went with the flow of it. And then, yeah, I mean, I knew even before that this is what I wanted to do. And then I was going to figure out a way to make it work. And it has, so I've been lucky.
Did you get some distractions along the way?
Oh, definitely.
How did you manage to just like look at the goal straight?
There's definitely times I get fed up with music, yeah, for sure. And I start thinking, well, maybe I should quit and just do something else and just do this for me. Because, you know, sometimes when you're playing music and you have to do music as a living, you're doing often what other people want you to be doing, not necessarily what you want to be doing. You know, I mean, ideally, I'd be playing my music all day, every day. Doesn't happen. Like you know, I mean, I do a little bit of my own music, but it's probably 10% of my time. And that's the nature of living in New Zealand, also doing what I do, which is working as a session musician. You know, you're a sideman, you're a hired musician. So, which is good because it means I can do lots of different gigs. And I think that's the way you make a living anywhere really, but particularly here, is being versatile and being able to do lots of different things. So if you just do one thing, and that thing dries up, you're stuck.
And how about your first blues gig? I mean, like, you were playing metal, and most cases, metalheads that I'm aware of, they are playing metal, like the Metallica and AC/DC and stuff like that. And suddenly, their gigs are becoming heavier and heavier into the extreme metal side of things. But for you kind of went sideways, go to blues rather than...
Yeah, it's interesting because a lot of people who do what I do kind of went through a similar path to me, because I know a lot of guys around the world that do similar sort of thing, because you get to know people over the time, and they often went through the kind of metal phase, and same for me, was through the Joe Satriani, Steve Vai phase, which I went through, because kind of went through, you know, blues and rock stuff, and then kind of into more technical kind of things, and then come out the other side playing all kinds of music. But I think that happens a lot because you develop your technique from playing metal, and you get your chops together, and then you've at least got the facility to play what you want to play. And so that seems to be pretty common. That people do that. I know lots of guys who do that. It's particularly the Satriani, Steve Vai type thing.
Right.
But also metal as well, because of the technical facility you get.
But they're totally kind of like, I'm trying to, like, I saw someone got interviewed in the Philippines. So they're talking about like a metalhead guitarist being accepted in a blues band. They're fascinated in a way that they're playing blues, but yet again, the scales that metal guy was doing is kind of like shredding. It's not bluesy. Kind of like they found like a mixture of things inside. So you can merge different, or fuse, if that's the right term, fuse different genre.
Well, when I was playing the more rock and metal, well, I don't even really call it metal, I'd call it more rock and hard rock, was that I had been playing blues before that. So it's not like I kind of had to transition into something. It was something that was already, that I was doing. And I was fascinated by all things with music. I mean, back then I used to buy the guitar magazines because that was a good way to learn.
Is that the Guitar World?
Guitar World, Total Guitar, all of those sorts of things back in the day. And I've still got a pile of those Guitar Worlds somewhere. And I would just learn everything that was in there.
Tablature, you mean? Sorry.
From tablature, yep, and written music. I could read a little bit then, but I found that you just learn everything from there. And I was, trying to absorb it all. So really, I didn't know what I was going to do with music at that point. I just knew I wanted to learn a bit of everything. Anything that kind of intrigued me, then I had to figure it out. And so that kind of led to, so when I was started doing more and more blues gigs, that was just a natural transition for me because I was already playing that music. And I do remember some of my first gigs, we were playing the Capitol Blues Club in Wellington. Yeah, with older musicians, of course. So, I was the young guy on the bandstand. Nowadays, I'm one of the older guys on the bandstand sometimes.
Do we have more and more musicians going to blues path?
I think less, actually, if anything. I think it's generally, I think that a lot of music now, if you look at it, there's not as much guitar in it. It goes in cycles. There's someone, I think what happens in the popular music filters down to everything else as well. So for a while there were, like if you look at the Kiwi bands, there were bands like Fat Freddy's Drop that were very, very popular, right? Really, it's a horn-driven band, right? Trumpet, sax, trombone, so I taught at the university here in Wellington at New Zealand School of Music. We had a lot of horn players at one stage because they were all watching that band and going, do you know what I mean? And whereas guitar, I don't think you see as much of it in the popular music, so it means that there's less people doing it, but particularly blues. I mean, John Mayer probably has a lot to do with that now, kind of resurrecting guitar and pop music, which I think is great.
So how was your first gig?
Terrible. Probably. At the time it felt fun, but I'm sure it sounded like rubbish, right?
Right.
You don't know what you're doing.
Yeah. But with respect to blues, when it's your first gig playing with blues guys, and you know that when it's blues, you're gonna be like more technical stuff in blues, right? Like if it's I'm just shooting out loud here, E minor pentatonic, for example, it's E minor pentatonic. You shouldn't go outside the rules. Is that the case?
I think so, and I'm sure I had no real idea what I was doing. Even though I'd listened to a bit of that music and absorbed as much as I could, I think I probably had no real clue about anything that really matters. But I mean, those people that were around obviously heard something in my playing because they kept booking me. Maybe they saw that there was, potential there to some degree, whatever that was kind of, yeah. But yeah, I definitely don't think I had it figured out at all. I don't think anybody does when they're young. You see a lot of young players who play very, very well. Usually what it means is they usually play technically very well. Because you can get the technique together kind of quickly and stuff. But the real musicality stuff, things like dynamic playing and being expressive, like really saying something with the notes, these things take time. And so, yeah.
You get frustrated when it comes to like you're trying a riff, or not a riff, you're trying a solo and you couldn't quite get it?
I think that's a natural thing. A lot of people get frustrated with things. I mean, at that point in time, I had a lot of technique, so I could kind of play most things I kind of put my mind to, but there were always things that I couldn't, and so those were things I had to work on and try and develop, and yeah.
Have you played across Aotearoa or New Zealand, like gigs? Yep. Like from north to south? What do you think is the culture like when playing here at Wellington for local scene, and then you go to Auckland, probably there's a different vibe or different culture, or you go to South, that's a different crowd again. So how do you?
There are definitely scenes in each city. Each city has its own scene. It's funny because I played all across New Zealand and lots of other countries around the world as well. But the scene in Auckland it's only an hour flight away from Wellington, but there's still this disconnect that happens between the two a lot. And I've got friends and colleagues up there that I talk to all the time that we sort of say, we should do something. Let's just trying to bridge that gap that happens. So it is different. I mean, Auckland's a really expensive city now, and it's a big city. I think that Auckland, it's a big city, so that changes things when you have To me, Auckland feels a bit more like a proper international city, whereas Wellington feels a bit like a town. And what I mean by that is that Auckland, the main acts that come to New Zealand, they go to Auckland and then that might be their only date they do. And then they take off. Whereas Wellington, we tend to miss out on a lot of things coming here, so all the benefits that come with that too. It's just different. But I mean, there's people doing just what I do up there as well. And same in Christchurch. I'm actually in Christchurch next weekend, playing with the Christchurch Symphony. I'll be in Christchurch for a day rehearsing with them, and then we actually play in Nelson. So Nelson Opera in the Park, which I've done 4 or 5 times now.
Right.
We got 4 singers plus orchestra, 4 pop singers, and then orchestra, and then they have an opera set at the beginning. So
Yeah, right. And can you play with, like, if they invite you without practice, just go and jump into it?
that's what I have to do all the time.
Oh, really? Like improvise? Is that the term? Improvise?
Yep. Improvise, sight reading. Sometimes I have gigs where someone's sick. Can you come in and do the gig tonight? I'm known as someone who's a strong sight reader. So I get called all the time, like, happens a lot. Or, a couple of years ago, there was a show in Auckland they did, it was the Auckland Philharmonic, and they did 2 children's shows, actually. One called The Stick Man and one called Room on the Broom, which I didn't know. My daughter's much older than that now. But these were very popular children's programs. But the music was written by a French classical guitarist. Insanely hard. Really hard. So they asked around everyone in Auckland, and everyone kind of went, no, I'm not taking that on. So I got the call about a week out saying, would you come up and do this thing? So I did. So it meant I had to just knuckle down for a week and go in and do it. And so that often happens if there's they can't get people in a certain place, then they'll bring me in. Sometimes it's a couple of hours before, sometimes it's a week before. So I had to go and, sometimes there's no rehearsal. At most blues gigs, there's no rehearsal. We actually sound worse when we rehearse most of the time with the blues gigs. And the main reason is if we rehearse, now there's an expectation that it'll go a certain way. Whereas if everybody's just open and listening and knows the music, then it can go, you interact, and that's when the music is good.
So if you make a mistake, I'm just gonna call it mistake, but let's say you're playing and then you hit the wrong note. How do you feel about that?
To me, it's like that sort of stuff used to really bother me, but I've been playing long enough now that I know what to do if that happens. Sort of work your way around it, and you make something of it instead of letting it. See, that kind of stuff. I don't know. I mean, the wrong notes, so to speak. I don't really see there as being that many wrong notes anymore. It's just how you use it, and everything is accessible if you know how to use it. So if you hit a note that's maybe not the best note you can do, you can surround it with 2 other notes, and then all of a sudden it makes sense. But also too, there's a confidence that comes from having done something for a long time. You sort of know that you can handle whatever's going to happen. And 2, there's a chance of something magical happening because of it's in the moment. Whereas sometimes the more and more you rehearse, it sort of becomes
like not norm. I don't want to use normal. It's kind of like subconsciously in your mind.
Yeah, it becomes kind of, you're just running through the motions rather than actually like being present in the moment. Some of the symphony orchestra gigs I do though can be high pressure and not to make a mistake. Like really high pressure, because those guys, they play incredibly well and they generally don't make mistakes. They do. They're not perfect, but nobody is. But they generally don't. So therefore, if I'm coming in as the guitarist, there's a real expectation of don't make a mistake, That can be a lot of pressure. But, I always go in prepared, and I think that's part of it. Like, that's what gives me the confidence to know I can do. So even if I go to a blues gig where there's no rehearsal, I don't know any of the songs that we're going to play, I know a lot of blues songs, and I've done a lot of blues gigs, and I've done a lot of practice on the guitar, and I've got a lot of things worked out on the guitar that I know whatever's going to be thrown at me, I cope with it. So that gives me confidence to sort of be, it's not, I think there's a difference between confidence and arrogance. It's not arrogance. I'm not thinking, I'm the greatest thing ever, but I know what I can do, so I go in and I just do that.
Do you usually critique other players?
Yeah.
In a positive way,
If someone asks me to, then for sure. And I mean, I do lessons with people sometimes, so they come over for guitar lessons. I have a couple of students I do a week. I teach on a Monday night, and they're both of them are going to be pro players. I know that already. They know that already, and I know that. So they're exceptional young guitar players. So the thing with that is that, yeah, in that case, it's there to critique. But if someone, I don't be analytical about people I don't know, or, you know, I just try and absorb the music, and I either like it or I don't. And if I don't like it, move on to the next thing. Yeah. There's so much greatness in the world that why focus on anything else?
What's the most memorable thing that happened to you during a gig with a musician anywhere in New Zealand? Or
oh, gee. Good or bad memories? Because there's definitely some... there's one that I've talked about before a fair bit, and it was with the singer Ali Harper. She's wonderful, and we were playing at the Southwoods Car Museum, and it was an 8-piece band, and she wanted to do a song that was just guitar and voice to sort of break it down in the middle, and we're doing this, and I heard this bee going around my head, and then it stung me on the back of the head here. So I'm going like this, you know, and of course it's just me and her. There's no... So if I'm stopping playing... So I'm trying, and it stung me on the top of the head, and it hurt like hell, but I was like, I couldn't do anything. So I had to just kind of play through it. She didn't even notice. She didn't notice at all. I said to her afterwards, I said, did you notice it? No. And I've talked to her since, like, years. This is probably 10 years ago, this gig. But I've talked to her about it, and she said, no, don't remember at all. Funny, eh? But yeah, that was definitely a memory that was stuck in my mind. But there's been so many highs with playing music, you know, it's wonderful, and especially when I get to play with really great musicians, that's when the music goes to a level that is just exciting. And there's loads of those.
in terms of writing, how do you like compose yourself before writing, and in terms of recording? And then probably we can proceed with recording as well and collaborating with other musicians. And definitely you're gonna need your drummer, you're gonna need a bassist as well, and things like that.
Yeah, so for me, I mean, when I'm writing music, I need free time. I can't be busy. Like at the moment, I've got lots of things on my plate that I'm juggling. There's a gig this weekend where I'm playing a solo set, not something I do very often. So that's taking a lot of time to kind of work up and be ready for. Because like I said, I like to be prepared. I don't want to go in there and sort of be, you know, not sure what's going to happen. So then my own YouTube videos, and then there's meetings and admin and lessons and all the other gigs and stuff in between. So I find when it's like that, I don't write very much. There used to be this thing that people would say that you should write at the piano because it's the most complete instrument, and there's a load of rubbish. It doesn't work for me. I don't play very well on piano. I can play a little bit, but I don't play very well on piano. So for me, the best writing I do is just when I'm sitting down playing the guitar and just with free time, and I'll just sit down and I'll stumble upon something and I go, that's a cool idea, and I write it down or record it in my phone, and then I develop that later. So I go away and I will come back to it. No, is it a good idea? Is it not? And then develop it into a song, and then I take it to whichever band seems to suit the most for that music.
I remember one scenario where I just forgot who was interviewing whom, but Paul McCartney slept and then had a dream about, I think that was Let It Be or something. And then he dreamt about that hymn or the music in his head, and then the following day he wrote. Do you do something like that, or have you had?
A little bit of that, but yeah, definitely I've had music come to me at the most strangest of times. Driving in the car or something and an idea pops into your head. I've definitely had ideas which weren't my own, and I thought they were at the time. And you go away afterwards and you say, oh, that kind of sounds like that. Oh, maybe I'd heard that in my mind or something, and sort of, so you discard that and you move on. But yeah, music comes to people in different kinds of ways. I like the music that I write to be quite bare-boned and not have a lot of stuff around it and leave it up to the musicians. So the musicians I'm working with are in a lot of ways collaborators. You know, I'm the one steering the ship, but they're also kind of helping the ship to sail. Do you know what I mean? So, and I think that's mostly because I for a large part, see myself as an improviser. You know, in the jazz, I don't think I really play jazz music, although jazz informs what I do. So a lot of my music has that at the core of it, improvised stuff.
What's the difference between jazz and blues?
some big differences. But the jazz has a different set of harmony, usually a more advanced kind of harmony in it. Blues tends to be simpler harmony. The beat is different on a jazz thing. It's more of a swing feel typically. Blues can be lots of different things. You can have funky blues, rumba blues. You can have swing blues as well, where it kind of crosses over.
Are those subgenres like funky blues and stuff?
Kind of, yeah, I think so. Although most blues musicians, if they do a set of music, will play a bunch of styles of blues within one thing. There'll be some shuffles. There might be a funky tune. There might be a rumba tune. There might be a slow ballady blues. They put variety in it, but they're still all within the same thing. Jazz music tends to be very improvised, coming from there. The language is different. The set of notes and the way in which you play those notes is different. So
I thought they're kind of interrelated. The reason why
they are related.
Really?
Yep.
Okay.
Jazz, like most genres, came from the blues. Rock came from the blues. It's kind of the core of a lot of this stuff. So jazz kind of was an offshoot of the blues. Jazz essentially is started as Western music, Western classical music and blues combined.
Mm-hmm. You just mentioned rock came from blues. I have these triads of heavy metal, like Led Zepp, Deep Purple, and the other one is Black Sabbath. They are all blues influence, right?
Yeah, AC/DC too, right?
Yeah.
We were mentioning AC/DC too as they were a blues band when they started, and you can hear it in their roots of it. What they do is blues based, right? And definitely Led Zeppelin for sure, right? Led Zeppelin, I mean Jimmy Page, they sound like blues guys. I'd agree with that totally.
I was about to ask you about the blues. Oh yeah, the blues one is kind of, I feel like it's more of breaking the rules. No, not blues, the jazz one. It's kind of they're breaking the rules in music. This is just my opinion. Probably it won't make sense, but I heard one of your music and it kind of sounded to me like a jazz wherein you're just kind of like playing a chord. And then if it's a 4/4 string, 1, 2, 3, 4. But the bass player's doing the kind of like a lead on a bass, kind of trying to catch up with your just one chord. I feel like they're breaking the rules, but they're kind of sounding cool. That's how I was telling my metalhead friend, I feel like they're breaking the rules, but in a good way, kind of like improvising.
Yeah, I think that can be a thing for sure. I think jazz has become, in a lot of ways, kind of like classical music has become, where it's become almost a museum piece that you have to do it a certain way. A lot of musicians look back to what happened in the 60s, Miles Davis, John Coltrane, people like that, and they go, well, this is the way jazz is done. And there are some people who are definitely very forward thinking with jazz, and they go, right, well, that's what they think. This is what I think. And the more I think you get away from, the kind of conventional thinking, the less popular your music is going to be. But that's fine too. Some people think, David Fuzinski, a really great New York guy, he plays fretless guitar. And he plays wild, like quarter tuning, Indian influence things, and he kind of just turns it on its head, and that's fine. He deliberately trying to break the rules and do his own thing, but that's what makes it exciting. You know what I mean? And then other people kind of do. There was this guy, saxophone player, Alex Bartley, I think his name is, and he was playing way more out of the Charlie Parker kind of rule book. Modern take on it, but very much that. So if you put those two musicians side by side, they're extremes, but you would call them both jazz musicians. And I think that's where genre is kind of an interesting thing, because jazz is used as an umbrella term, just like blues is, but there's so much within it. So when some people say to me, oh, I don't like jazz, you hear that sometimes, You go, okay, well, have you listened to it? And they go, yeah, I heard this thing one time. I go, well, that's that, but what about this? And what about this? And what about this? And there's so many, and usually you find there are some things that they really do like, some jazz music that they love even, and so they don't like this type of jazz, but they like this type of jazz.
But it's still jazz.
Still, yeah, because it's a broad genre, just like blues. It's kind of a term that's given to an overall thing. When B.B. King was blues, right? But then so was Eric Clapton. Couldn't be more different. Same with metal. Metal's a genre that's used as a term over, right? And you can get like speed metal, thrash metal. I mean, Metallica were metal for a while, right? But they're really like now heavy rock, right? But even within metal, there's so many subgenres. Some of the subgenres can be really big and broad, you know? So, yeah.
Okay.
I think genre matters that much anymore, as it's just a name.
And then as long as you're enjoying the music
Yeah,
and
exactly.
being soaked into that music, right?
That's it. It's either good or bad. So I look at it. You either like it or you don't.
Yeah, that's correct. And going to your business side of things, once you've written your song, you've recorded with you've recorded it collaborating with other musicians. Now time to release the record. How would you do that? Do you record? You said you're recording it down at your studio.
No, I don't. I don't tend to record my stuff here. I do recording work for people. So people book me to play guitar on songs and TV stuff, theatre shows, albums, a lot of recordings for people's albums and stuff. And I do that in my studio downstairs because it's just playing guitar. But my stuff, I tend to want to play with musicians at the same time. I don't want it to be an overdub session. I want we're all in the same room, we play together, and so I tend to book out studios for that. My last one I recorded in Los Angeles at a studio called Kronos in Burbank with a really great engineer. And we were all playing at the same time, same room, drums in one room, bass in the next room, guitar in the next room. We all could see each other and we were playing together. Yeah, and that was about 7 years ago now, so I'm overdue to do a new album. And then there was a record label that put that out. I don't necessarily like going with record labels, to be completely honest.
So you're doing everything, like marketing. Record labels does the marketing as well, right?
They do a little bit of that stuff, but the thing is nowadays they do less and less of that kind of stuff. Do you know what I mean? A lot of times you can do that stuff yourself. You don't need them to do it. You know what I mean? And so the label's influence on the music industry is not what it used to be, and so you don't really need that, especially not in the music I do. It's not pop music, so it's not. I'm not aiming for that. Never have. I'm doing it for me. You know what I mean? So it's sort of, and if people like it, then great. And you know, it finds its audience, the people that are into the same kind of thing, and that's cool. Yeah, and then those people, once they like it, they'll buy your next one, they buy your next one, and they tell other people, and it sort of grows. But big thing for me is kind of social media stuff. That's where I push a lot of my stuff for releasing albums. And then, of course, getting out and playing. So I'll do stuff and I'll, mention that there's a new album, or there'll be posters up, that kind of stuff. And then the labels do stuff as well. They usually do this stuff. Used to be a lot of getting reviews used to matter. I don't know if getting reviews matter anymore with, if you sell any more or less albums out of that. Maybe you do, I don't know. Radio really helped. TV definitely helps if you can get on TV with stuff. But there seems to be less of those opportunities nowadays, so.
Because of like the big tech company platforms like...
I think the TV studios have closed. This is a big part of it. Like there used to be Avalon TV studios in Wellington, and then that was we worked out there all the time for doing stuff. So if you had an album, you'd ring someone up that you knew out there and you'd say, hey, I got a new album out, can we do something? And they'd give you a slot on the Good Morning Show, for example, or whatever. And now that stuff that's closed, and they now do a lot of it in Auckland. And even then the Auckland studio is much, much smaller, and they don't tend to produce a lot of stuff. They tend to buy shows and then just put them on the TV. So TVNZ, for example, it's a state broadcaster, but it's not really doing New Zealand stuff as much as it used to. It's more MasterChef Australia and the same kind of things that they just buy. Whereas they used to produce a lot of television, so therefore that was a great way to promote your album.
Like local, right?
Yeah. Whereas now that stuff's not there. So yeah, it's just gone more online. YouTube's are still a really great platform for stuff, I think.
So you're doing everything by yourself?
Pretty much.
So how do you manage, like, you have to make sure, like, you're doing marketing now for assuming you have your new album today, you're doing marketing now, and then you're doing practice, which is kind of, like, important, and then you're posting something on social media. How do you balance your...
Yeah, tell me about it. That's the problem. The days of just having to play guitar, those are gone. When I first started, all I had to do was focus on playing this. Now it's a lot of admin, I'm a lot of emails and a lot of kind of chasing things up and sorting things out and organizing gigs. I never used to have to organize so many gigs, but
That's another skill.
It is what it is, yeah. So if I had a new album out, then I don't know what I'd do right now, actually, to be honest, because it's been 7 years since my last one came out, and everything's changed since then. So I'd probably have to start looking at the avenues because it'd be different than what it was.
In terms of like handling the admin stuff, like if they will be booking you, so basically it's you're the one, or you're the ones communicating to those who will be booking, and all the admin stuff is being done by you.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I'd love to have an agent or someone dealing with all of that stuff, but that's not really a thing here so much, unless you're someone who's like a pop act. Like Stan Walker would have his own agent. Dave Dobbin has Lorraine Barry, for example, that does his stuff, you know. That kind of pop artist, yeah, sure. But most musicians who are just players like me, just do your own stuff, you know. People get in touch. Like the gig I'm doing tomorrow, solo gig, was through a friend, and he runs a music venue, and he said, hey, I've got this thing, do you want to come out and do a concert here? And so that was booked 6 months ago. And that's the thing, you book 6 months, you're booking ahead for pretty much everything.
It's not like last week or...
No, unless the only time that happens really is if I have to fill in for somebody else. Somebody gets sick, especially if somebody gets COVID, then you sort of, you know, and because I can do a lot of things, then I end up doing a lot of that, you know. But yeah, generally it's booked in advance.
So going back to writing songs and doing your practice and stuff, what's your opinion about AI doing stuff?
Yeah, I think it's just another tool like anything else. I mean, a lot of musicians are scared about it, and I can understand why, because, you know, it's sort of seen as this big scary thing that's going to take over. But I think it'll kind of be like Photoshop. You know, you see a photo of someone and we know straight away, we can go, that woman's been photoshopped, or that man's been photoshopped, you know, like a model or whatever. We can see it straight away and people know, oh, that's photoshopped. And I think the thing with AI, it'll just be another tool in the same kind of way.
So would you write a song using AI?
I wouldn't. No, I'm not interested in that kind of stuff.
Okay.
But I do use AI tools, for sure. For example, if I have to write an email to someone, I'll take it and I'll put it in ChatGPT, and I'll just make sure it corrects the spelling and maybe looks at the grammar and makes sure it all makes sense. Boom, done. Just as a tool to sort of make sure that I'm getting my point across properly. It's not writing the email for me. I'm just using it to kind of fix it, essentially. Yeah, and there's some AI tools that are really powerful too. So something like what you're doing right now, there's some AI tools now that will do the edit for you. And that to me is amazing, because, you know, I used to manually have to go through and cut between camera 1, cut between camera 2, and now you can just get that stuff to do it. So that's kind of great. I think the forgery part of AI is going to be a problem. We're stealing stuff, and, you know, if they're using AI things to train, you know.
To train it like Nick Granville, how to play like Nick Granville.
Yeah, or say I do a guitar lesson on whatever topic. I don't know, Jimi Hendrix. It could take that lesson and use it to train it to do that, and then essentially pass it on to someone else. So I think that kind of stuff of it needs to be sorted out, the kind of copyright areas of it. Typically what's happened with internet stuff, though, is the business side and the copyright side is always left till way too late. Right? Look at Napster and all that kind of stuff come along, and then like 10 years later they started figuring out how to deal with it. Do you know what I mean? And then Apple Music came along, and Spotify and these things, and sort of now people don't mind paying for it. And they've figured out how the copyright works around that. I think AI will be the same thing, but it'll be further down the road that they'll figure it out. Because the technology moves faster than the politicians do, that's for sure.
So much debate rather than doing the work.
What's complicated too, because they have to kind of react to things. Do you know what I mean? I get it. It is what it is. But yeah, I'm not worried about AI. I think it's just another thing. I think what will happen is there'll be so much of that stuff happen that people will crave real things. They'll see stuff and they'll go, like a photoshopped image. You see it and you just go, it looks really fake to me, and you know it straight away. And so you want to see something that looks real. I think the same thing will happen with music. I think people they'll see that stuff and they'll want something that's real. Because music's really about human connection, isn't it? Storytelling, when you think about it. So if I'm playing guitar and I'm playing a song, I'm trying to say something to people.
If you can go back in time and you're gonna start again, are you gonna be doing the same kind of thing?
Pretty much.
Okay.
Yep.
Would you do it differently?
I'd buy up the cheap guitars back then that are worth a lot of money now
And then auction it in.
and sell them on and pay your house off, right? Because it's, yeah, that's the big thing. Like, nobody knew back in when I started that those instruments would be very, very valuable. You know, you used to be able to buy 1970s Strats for like under $1,000.
Or 59 Les Paul.
Yeah,
That everyone-
exactly. That everyone wants. You know, they go for like 500,000-600,000 now, and you could buy them for maybe. It's still expensive, but they weren't what they are now. So that's probably the one thing I would change is I'd buy up a whole heap of those that hang on to them, and to buy more houses too.
Right,
Right? Because all houses went up in value too. So things like that, I mean, in hindsight. But no, I probably wouldn't change much, you know. I probably would have, one thing I probably would have done sooner had I had the opportunity to was go overseas more, particularly to the United States, and started doing that earlier in my career. Because to me, it wasn't till I was in my 30s that I really started going over there quite regularly. But, you know, probably if I could change anything, I probably would have started going in my 20s and just making more of a connection with this music scene over there and the people.
Right. I saw your NAM video. Do you usually go there, like regularly?
Yeah, so that was my 6th NAMM I think I've been to. So I've been to LA 11 times now, or 12 times, whatever it is. But that was my 6th time of going to the NAMM show. And it's a really great thing for a musician, you know. Inspiration, you get to see all the gear, get to meet people, make connections, you know. It's a really great way of kind of getting in on certain things in the music scene. So, yeah, but I wish I'd done that earlier in my life. You know, like I said, it wasn't until I was in my 30s that I really started going there and connecting with that. So
I've been meaning to ask you about the P90. Did this P90s came from this guitar?
these are replacements, but yeah, this is I've had this since 2004. I think it's a 2001. And these are replacement pickups from a guy in New Zealand, actually, a guy in Auckland called Glenn Evans, goes by Mr. Glenn Pickups, and he custom made these for me, and they're really great. But it did have P90s in it when I got it. I just didn't like the sound of the ones that were in there.
I'm assuming this is mahogany, right?
Mahogany, maple top, maple fretboard, yeah. And all of that playware I did. I've done a lot of gigs on this guitar.
Right. How long have you been? How many guitars do you have? Like, how much is too much as a guitar player?
I think if you've got stuff you're not using, then it's a problem, right? For me, I use everything, right? I have about 20 at the moment, so different things. But even like that guitar that's just behind you over there, I don't know if you can see that, but that guitar is now living right there in the living room, and I've set that up for slide because I'm trying to learn to be a better slide player. When I was at the NAMM show, a guy heard me playing and he said, "Oh, come over," and he showed me his booth and he says, "We make custom slides." He goes, "I want to give you one." He goes, "You play really great." I said, "Yeah, but I don't really play slide." He goes, "Well, I'm going to give you one and then you can get better at it," because he liked my playing. So that was nice. And so it's now having that guitar in the living room means it's set up for slide and it's ready to go. And so I'm getting better at that stuff. So for me, they're just tools. They're all different tools. So of those guitars I have, I use all of them. The one I probably use the least is the 12-string electric, but there's sometimes when recording, that's just the perfect instrument. So yeah, so for me, so I think it's whatever you use, but nobody has to justify anything. If someone wants to have 100 guitars because they just love them and they can afford to, go for it. It's up to them. People talk about the equation that the correct number of guitars is whatever you have plus one.
That's one.
Yeah, plus one. So there's always one more you want, right?
And then there's a new one that's coming out.
Exactly.
Like, oh, right.
Plus one. Always plus one.
Have you tried playing like 7-string or 8-string?
Yeah, I can't do that. It totally throws me off.
Is it a different rule?
Yeah, completely. Because you get a lot of your reference from the bottom string on the guitar and where things are. And so if you have another string below that, it totally throws me off. I could learn it. There's not a lot of use for it in the music I play. So it's sort of not something I do, but I know people who do. I've got a friend who plays 7-string and he's got a jazz guitar, you know, a big hollow body jazz F-hole guitar that he had made with a 7th string, because mostly he plays by himself.
Really?
So having that extra low string means he can kind of get the bass line sounding stuff underneath, and that works for him. I don't tend to do that.
The only reason I asked about it is Steve Vai, he invented like the 7th string, as far as I can remember.
Yeah.
If I'm wrong, okay, you can.
The Universe, yeah, that was.
He started that. That's why. And you mentioned Steve Vai a while ago with Joseph Tran and stuff. So
But it's interesting, isn't it? Because he didn't invent that guitar for playing metal, did he?
no.
He invented it for his instrumental rock stuff, and then the metal guys went, hey, actually, it's kind of cool with that extra low string, and we'll take that and do our thing with it. So its intention was not what it ended up being. Yeah. No, it's a different thing too. I mean, yeah. There's 6 strings to try and figure out how to play. That's enough for me.
And 24 frets, you want to play, have you played like 24 frets?
Yeah, I've got a 24 fret guitar downstairs. I like 22 frets. That's where I like most of the time. And again, it's a point of reference that I know that. I know where that fret is, and so I don't have to think. Do you know what I mean? Because as I have a 24 fret guitar, I start having to think, especially if I start getting up here, I find I overshoot notes, and I do. So that's why I just like 6 strings, 22 frets.
Is it an active pickup?
No,
it's not.
No. Yeah, the finish on the neck was removed before I got it.
Okay.
Someone stripped it off.
Wow, that's smooth.
Yeah, I prefer finish. Like, I've actually thought about getting it refinished, but it and the tuners have been replaced. This guitar's had a lot of things done to it.
Yeah.
Strap button used to be here for a while.
A lot of history.
Yeah, it got a chip here, so I sanded that back because it was catching on clothing.
Did it change the tune? Because this one is no longer like the original.
No, it doesn't affect it at all. No, it probably sounds better. I'd have thought about taking all the finish off and just it would sound better. I think sometimes too much finish, it stops it breathing.
Ah, okay. And then does it go?
Yep.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. And they've had it rewired. It's the original part.
Do you do rewiring as well? Do you do the
No, people do this stuff for me. I can't. I can do it, but I did some of the stuff with this. I did a bit of experimenting with different capacitors and resistors and stuff in it. But no, I take it to people that, because the thing is, I can do it. I mean, I know how it works and I know how to do it, but it takes me a long time. Whereas someone who does it all day, every day, they can do it quickly and they'll do it to a better standard. So
have you
I
tried
just want to play the thing.
replacing this ones as well? Like
The
if
frets?
this is an old guitar, then
Yeah, they're probably due for it. They're quite flat now and they're looking like they need a bit of rounding. They're still quite high. Yeah, I have thought about getting it refretted. I'll probably, I mean, it could probably just do with a recrown. It needs a setup, so.
Does it cost much if you're gonna replace the frets? Or just buy a new guitar?
No,
You're probably not gonna replace it.
No, yeah, I mean, on a guitar like this, it's totally worth it. On a cheap guitar, it was not worth it. If it's a $200 guitar, don't bother. I mean, these were $12,000 guitars when it came out in New Zealand, so refret is 10, it would be $400 or $500.
For this brand is they're so expensive.
Yeah, they were very custom at the time, like they were largely handmade. If you see the serial numbers written in pen,
Right. Oh, yeah.
because they were largely made by hand at the time, you know. So that's why you pay for it. And they're good quality, really good quality. So I bought the second hand. I actually went to buy it and the guy who owns the music shop bought it. And at the time, and so it sold.
So you bought it for 10 grand? No.
He bought it for 12, I think it was at the time. And then he sold it to me about 4 years later. And what I did was I bought it for 6,000 or 7,000. And what I did was I traded in a couple of guitars to get the price down. So, yeah. And so, yep, it's been with me ever since. And I have lots of guitars like that have kind of found their way to me.
Yeah.
You know, because I remember playing this in the music shop and there was 2 of them, a red one and a blue one. Red one didn't sound as good.
Or maybe
Every tree's different. They don't, you know, the way it's made.
Even if they say like mahogany, but it's a different tree. I didn't know
Different
that.
tree, different construction. They just different. Yeah, they all sound different.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought it's just like if it's a mahogany, you know, it's mahogany. I wasn't thinking about like if it's a different tree. It depends on where it grew.
Yeah, different tree and different. I mean, it depends how it's been cut, how it's been all constructed. You know, the way all the things work together can help and influence how guitar sounds. So
did you ask for like the historical background of the guitar before you bought it?
no.
No. You just played it and then
Played it, liked it, and went, okay, that's cool. But it literally, he bought it that night that I tried it. And then, like I said, 4 years later, he said, I'm thinking about selling that guitar. He wasn't really playing. He owned a music store and just wanted to, I guess, get the money out of it and put it into something else. So ended up with me. Yeah.
Nice.
And I changed the pickups. That's something I did recently, and that made a big difference because I didn't like what was in there. And I think that's why I kind of went on and off play this guitar, and then sometimes play it and other times not. And I think it was because of the pickups. And so now they're really good.
I feel like this is a borderline between blues and rock, kind of. Like the pickups, like the way it sounded, like
It's kind of like a Strat in a lot of ways, this guitar, but a fatter sounding Strat, which suits me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice guitar.
Yeah, it's it's been just a workhorse guitar.
Hang on, I got.
Yeah. Go for it.
You've done so much a lot in terms of achievement and stuff. What's next for Nick Granville?
Good question. Trying to. I think for me, I'm moving more and more online with stuff, particularly around YouTube as a platform for me. So I can see myself doing more and more in that kind of space, and developing that. And I think everybody is going to, and I think that was a lesson that a lot of people had with the whole pandemic, and when that happened, that a lot of musicians realized, okay, we're going to have to diversify what we do. Just playing is not really a thing anymore. So I can see myself doing more in that kind of space, and I really enjoy doing that stuff. It's good fun, and it's connecting with people in a different kind of way to how you connect when you play live or whatever. But you also, too, you're not limited by being in a small country like New Zealand. Used to be. Have a very limited audience. Now you have this big audience, potentially. So I could see myself doing more of that. I'd like to do another album this year. That's something we've been discussing already. So I started working on some stuff towards that. Maybe even early next year, the worst case scenario. So yeah, working out exactly how I'm going to do that and making that work. So yeah, just more of the same. Keep playing as much as I can. Getting better.
What advice would you give to people who are like, a lot of the local scenes are kind of like, should I say dropping off, or is that a term?
Yeah.
Losing audience and stuff, and some of them, like if you've seen the news in some of the local news, wherein some are even complaining at night because of like noise control, something like that. So what do you think, or what advice do you think?
I think that kind of stuff with noise control is a bit ridiculous, isn't it? Like these people that buy apartments in the city and then complain about the noise. So if you don't want noise, don't live in the city. Do you know what I mean? Matterhorn, used to be a really great venue in Wellington, and they put apartments next to it and then closed the music down. Stupid. Matterhorn was there before the music, before the apartments. You know what I mean? It's like, don't buy next to a place like that if you don't want noise. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, that's kind of tough on venues, I think. There needs to be more practical kind of things from councils in terms of that. Wellington City Council really aren't helping things with music at all. They really aren't. A lot of venues have been closing down because of them. And Matterhorn's a prime example. Wellington City Council should have gone to them and said, no, too bad. You came here after this was established, and you need to just... if they're being unreasonably loud, that's different. Or say they were, at 2 o'clock in the morning, that's fair. But, if a gig's happening and it's before 11 o'clock at night and it's a Friday night, just be reasonable. Do you know what I mean? So that's definitely changing things. Yeah, I think.
Given that they are now being closing down because of that, and then what do you think in terms of support, maybe from the local people in terms of that?
Yeah, I think that the only advice I kind of give to people in that sense is just keep doing it. Find a way to do it. Do house concerts. Yeah, do YouTube videos. Book out a local hall. Put on a concert. Like, just do music. Keep doing it, and things will happen. And the thing is, I think the traditional ways that music has occurred, if that's not working now, then do something new. Set up a really good live streaming setup at your house and do more of that and charge people. You'll find a way to make money at it. Do you know what I mean? Even if that doesn't happen to start with. But if you want to do it badly, you'll figure out a way. And I think that some of the elected representatives around cities could help music a lot. People still want music. I think people want music as much as ever. They're spending a lot of time watching it online, and they still want to experience it. You see, when people come out to gigs, that they have a really unique experience that they love, and they come up to me all the time after gigs and say how much they love it. And so therefore there needs to be that support network to keep that going for people, because without it, it'll disappear and then we all lose.
And if I am a 40-year-old dude wanting to grab a guitar, what's your advice to me?
Take lessons. It's probably the best thing you can do, because the thing is, you can figure stuff out for yourself. And there's a lot of good stuff on YouTube and things like that. But the problem is, if you're just starting out or you're not really sure, you don't know where to look. Whereas you take some lessons with a really good teacher, they'll guide you on the right track and get you going and make sure your technique's right so that you've got something to develop upon. Do it because it's fun. That's what I think for people. It's supposed to be fun. So if you're learning in your 40s and you're just starting out, or you're an intermediate player or whatever, and you want to get better, do what makes you happy, because then you'll keep doing it. You know what I mean? Buy the guitar that looks cool to you.
Not expensive too.
Yeah, or cheap or expensive, whatever. As long as you think it looks cool, you'll want to play it.
What is music to you?
To me, music is good question, actually. Music is something that I love. And music is a big part of my life. It's not all my life. Some people it is. They kind of get too obsessed with it. And maybe I was once like that. But music is something that I love and that I enjoy. And it makes me happy, makes me sad, makes me angry. It makes me a range of emotions when I hear different forms of music and different stuff. So it's been a great big part of my life.
Do you grab your instrument if you're happy or you're sad, just to express it?
Mm-hmm. Totally. Yep.
What is blues?
Good question as well. I think it's a genre, and it can be whatever you want it to be.
Do you play other genre as well, aside from jazz, blues, and rock?
I play everything.
Everything.
I would say I'm definitely not a specialist at country music, although I can bluff it a little bit. I'm definitely not a specialist at hip hop kind of stuff and that stuff, although I've done a little bit in that. I'm definitely no specialist at classical music, although I can play probably more classical than I can play country or hip hop. So there's genres like that I'm definitely no metal specialist, although I can play some. But definitely I think within the popular music styles, so jazz, blues, funk, soul music, R&B, that sort of stuff, that's kind of where I operate. But definitely more towards improvised music, so jazz and blues is sort of where I operate the most. So
how can people find you?
YouTube, my YouTube channel, Nick Granville, is probably a good one. Facebook, Instagram, those are the main ones I do. My website, nickgranville.com.
Right. I think we're up to, I know you're gonna have another session after this, and I really appreciate your time. I know you're a super busy man.
Oh,
still find a way
it was nice to meet you and nice to do this.
Nice. Yeah.
Thank you very much
I've
for
enjoyed it a
asking
lot. No worries. I've enjoyed it a lot. And you're gonna be in Cuba sometime, right?
Yeah, I'm playing at the Blues Club in Wellington, Capital Blues. So we're playing this Sunday. I'm playing with a harmonica player, Neil Billington. We're doing it's a guitar, harmonica, bass and drums. And we have Darren Mathiasen playing drums, one of my favourite drummers around, and Elliot playing bass. And Neil plays harp. And we do sort of a mix of blues genres, but it's blues, but blues with a twist, right? So some of it rock's pretty hard, some of it's funky, some of it's kind of got jazz influences. So that'll be fun. Yeah,
it's gonna be cool. I hope I can see you there. So.
Yeah, to come, that'd be great. I think it's 4:00. We're playing like the afternoon set. It might actually be the closing of Cuba Duper for the Blues Club, Capital Blues.
There's a blues
and
club.
That's at Jack Hackett's. Yeah. Oh. So Capital Blues has been running for about 30 years, I think, or something like that. Right. And they host it at Jack Hackett's on a Friday night, the Irish bar, which is a weird combination, but it seems to work. Before that, it used to be the Hotel Bristol for years. But they run a gig every week, a blues gig every week. And when I say blues, some of it's a stretch of blues, but blues related. And they do that every week and have them for a long time. So,
thanks for your time. Appreciate it.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Nice to meet you.
Can I do a fist bump?
There we go.
Thank you. welcome. And then, so the first time I saw the way you play is one thing that has drawn me to your having this goal, like I want to be a musician, and then do you get frustrated?
There is some.
Is that an airplane?
I don't know.
No, that's okay.
No, I think
Or a truck.
it's a truck outside. I told you it can be noisy here. What was the part about advice? Sorry, that you asked.
What do you think? Hang on.